Happy Solstice, everyone. I'm here on the darkest day of the year, the winter solstice, because I want to talk to you about the dark, right? All the time, students ask me questions and they relate it to the dark. Dark goddesses, darker magics, dark paths, etc., etc., etc. And while I guess it's kind of like what the senator said about pornography, I can't define it exactly, but I know it when I see it, I still always ask what people mean when they say the dark. And the answers I've got, I've laid out into a couple different distinctions. So I think it's worth talking about on this, the darkest night, the shortest day, etc. So let's go right in. Number one is probably the most primordial, and that is what is beyond the light. If you imagine ancient people gathered around a fire at night, the darkness is what is beyond the fire. This is why so many rites of witching and the year's walk in Sweden tell you to go beyond the light of torches and towns, because it's into the unknown, right? And so in that respect, all magic and sorcery is dark arts. We are dealing with things that are unknown, or at least too subtle to be known as firmly as we know other things that are illuminated in the light. So that's awesome. And this is why dark caves, the underworld, what lies beyond death, and for that matter, what lies in the outer reaches of outer space, is the dark, right? So I can work with that. That to me is a meaningful and profound interpretation of the dark. There are some others. There's just simply an aesthetic, a gothic aesthetic, and that's cool too. I used to really dig that when I was a little bit younger, and people really dig it now. And like all aesthetic choices, if it floats your boat, then cool. And aesthetics in their role in magic should not be underplayed either. Magic is an art and a science, and there are artist sorcerers and sorceresses where the aesthetic plays heavily into it. So sometimes the books and so on that get made fun of as dark fluff sometimes are worthy to be made fun of, and sometimes not. I'll leave that up for you to decide. Beyond that, though, we have then the dark in relation to the passions, right? Those, or let's call it Antinomianism. I don't have a script or notes in front of me. I'm just going off the top of my head. So let's call it Antinomianism. That which is not smiled upon in polite society, not collectivist, fierce independence, but also an embrace of all the things that scare us and the passions, sometimes hurtful, sometimes lustful, sometimes violent. And so here is where, for me, it gets into, well, how are we dealing with these things, right? So I'm an old tantrika, so the tantrics, they have a tantric mode of enlightenment where you're embracing, you're not embracing just wild abandon in what Buddhists would think of as poisons, but you're using them mindfully. You're bringing them into the light. You're integrating them into your practice, and it actually leads to the same enlightenment that the people who renounce those passions, the bodhisattvas and the monks and so on, it's the same enlightenment. It's not a different enlightenment. So in that sense, for the Tantrika, the left hand, dark, thanatotic. It's all sex and death imagery. And the right hand, they lead to the same place. Just one is faster and more dangerous. One is slower and more sure. And so that's another interpretation of the dark. But see, when we start getting into that thinking, then there's yet another classification that people tell me. And that is anything that's malefic. Anything that embraces curse work and manipulation and coercion, or just outright harming others and domination and so on. Now, I grew up, I came of age in the Satanic Panic. So I was a witch during the Satanic Panic and explaining myself to everyone around. And the books that we had available at the mall bookstore, at least, they were all very whitewashed about curses. No witch would ever curse because they know the law of karma and so on and so forth. And most of which is garbage, in my opinion. And so cursing has a place. So when this started to change, when I started to get more specialized books, and then around the turn of the century, when people started publishing more books and classes and embracing the idea that Malefica has always been part of magic, I celebrate it. I think that's great, because there are plenty of people who I think most people find themselves in a situation that is dire or dangerous a couple times throughout their life, and it's good to have magical tools to help you get out of that. Furthermore, there are a lot of people who are denied justice for various reasons, and so for them, even the concept of vengeance, I won't call it a virtue, but if there's no justice to be had, neither is just leaving it and doing nothing and leaving everything unaddressed. So I don't judge those people either. So I think that these things are good to know, right? And certainly there are areas of the globe that are in unrest. This might be one of them soon. But where, just you live closer to the cycle of life and death, and there's violence realistically lurking around every corner, and you need to watch your back. There are plenty of areas of this country that's true, as well as other places. And so when it comes to whole systems that arise, and by the way, they're not necessarily the ones you think they are. People think like Santa Muerte practitioners are obsessed with this, and they're really not. But anyway, it's a matter of practicing something appropriate for where you are. Now, that's very different than being oriented to the dark in this manner, right? And unfortunately, there are people who are very oriented to the dark in this malefic manner. I used to, when I did consults, I would run into people all the time who, if they wanted to get a promotion, and I'm thinking they're going to be asking about making themselves noticed, making their work better, making them shine, or perhaps even just expansion so that luck goes on their side and that they, get this promotion, and they come to me and the first thought is, how do I take out everybody else that wants the job? There's also just the orientation to domination, right? So in financial sorcery, I remember I included glyphs for sweetening relations and for dominating relations. There are times, for instance, a court case where you might, what I have to say I need to win, and I don't care about everybody feeling good about it after the fact. So domination. You know, there's a time and a place. But people wanted to get this like tattooed so that all their words dominated everyone around them. And you don't even have to look in magic for this. You know, when I was younger, I had a job in sales and they paid for me to take this like NLP sales course. And people were just thinking about how they can make every interaction they have dominate the people around them. And I just walked away and I was like, what a crappy way to live. What a way to cut yourself off from an authentic experience with people that you want to have an authentic experience with. And even with your customers, what a way to sell them something fast and have them never come back to you because they feel disgusting afterwards. So there is this orientation to Malefica and the dark that I do think people get carried away with. And by the way, it's not always the people that are into the dark aesthetic or even advertising themselves as a dark path. I have seen this happen in fairly light-oriented groups that just, you know, they get bonzo with the curses. Like once they realize, okay, this is a part of magic, then all of a sudden they go bananas. So I would just say there's a cost. It's not karma. It's not that it comes back upon you. Certainly not 3 times. It's nothing like that. But think about what happens if you need to, I don't know, go hire Tony Soprano for something, right? Once, okay, you go see The Godfather, and he does the thing, you pay, and then you're done, and you go back to your life. But if you keep going, if you hang out, if you make friends, if you make this your whole bag, well, now you're surrounded by these beings that like violence and darkness. And this is a real concern. And so, just like with people, if you're hanging out constantly with those spirits who like to mess things up, you can't be shocked if sometimes when you want to get down to expansion or building a better life or things, well, things get messed up because look at who you're hanging out with, spiritually, if not personally. And of course, real devastating harm can come when people go down this path and think that the real magic must be bloody and violent. And we all know recent news stories, so we don't need to hash it now. But, you know, needless to say, no. You're responsible for what you do. And so, what I want to end with is that I don't believe in orienting myself to the light or to the dark. I don't believe in a right and left-hand path. It's not even that I believe in a middle path. I just simply don't accept that dichotomy at all. And I want everyone to remember that whether you are confronted with extreme light or extreme darkness, you're blinded. And so I think taking the solstice to meditate a little bit on the dark, to get to know the dark, to get to know the parts of the self, what people are calling the shadow nowadays, but the things that are out of balance, the impulses that we all have, I think that's wise. I think that prudent use of malefic magic is occasionally called for. But, you know, think about how you want your life to be and then make it that way. That's it for me. Thank you so much. And if I don't talk to you before New Year, have a New Year. Those who celebrate, Merry Christmas. Whatever you celebrate, have a great Yuletide and happy holidays. Thanks.